Welcome to the Press One for Nick podcast. My name is Nick Glimsdahl, and my guest this week is Dee Ann Turner. She is a 33-year veteran at Chick-fil-A, which is awesome. World's greatest chicken, world's greatest service. She was selected as the company's first female officer in 2001 and served as the Vice President of Talent and Vice President of Sustainability. During her long career, she worked closely with Chick-fil-A's founder, Truett Cathy, and other key leaders as an architect for their organizational culture. Today, she leads her own organization, Dee Ann Turner Associates, LLC, and she focuses on writing books and speaking to audience on how to steward extraordinary talent. Welcome to the Press One for Nick podcast, Dee Ann.
Thank you so much, Nick. It's great to be with you today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. One thing that I ask every single guest is, what's one thing people might not know about you?
Well, I like to think there's several, but when I get asked that question, I have a favorite answer. Actually, I have a very special talent.
Okay.
That not many people have, and that's that I can say the Superman call backwards.
I'm all ears.
Now, do you know what the Superman call forward is?
I don't. No.
Look, it's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's Superman, up, up, and away.
Okay.
Well, backwards, that's cool. Stia drib, stia enalpon, stia narapus, poo poo poo, Donna Yahweh.
Wow, that is some crazy talent. There is, how long did that take for you to do that?
Not long. My husband at one time, years ago, like 30 something years ago, was a youth minister. And so I was always getting asked for these, come to with my talent. Like every pastor's wife is supposed to have a talent, like she can sing and play the piano and all that. I couldn't do any of those things. So since I was married to a youth minister, I came up with an appropriate talent, and that was it. And that's what I used for my talent. Or when people ask me the question, what's something people don't know about you? It's like, well, I can do this unique thing.
Wow, that is something else. That is definitely unique that I've never heard anybody else do, or probably will do in the future. So well done on that talent. So I want to talk a little bit about the book. You got a couple books, but one of the books that I want to talk about is Bet on Talent. And it's how to create a remarkable culture that wins the heart of customers. So inside the book, there's a whole bunch of questions I could talk about, but I'm going to pick a handful of them. You talk about the employment value proposition. What is it, and why is it important?
The employment value proposition, and I talk about how I like to call an employment value promise, because it indicates a lot more commitment on both parts, but it's really what you get for what you give. So what is this organization going to offer me for me giving this organization my talents? I think about where talent is today, millennials, Gen Zs. So they're looking for three things. Number one, they're looking for a remarkable culture. We can break that down because that's what Bet on Talent's all about. They're looking to be a part of something bigger than themselves. They don't want to just make money for a company. They want that company to have real impact, and they want to contribute to it. And then thirdly, they're looking for opportunities to learn, grow, and develop, and for people to make the investment in them to do that. So that's what they want to, that's what they're looking for an organization to give to them in return for them bringing their talents to that organization. That's the employment value proposition.
Yeah, I love that. Have you always bet on talent?
That is what I learned from the very beginning of my career, which was a long, long time ago, Nick. But over 35 years ago, my mentor, founder of Chick-fil-A, Truett Cathy, that's really basically what he taught me, that people decisions are the most important decisions a leader makes. And an organization can bet on a lot of things. They can bet on technology and strategy and marketing, location. But I think the best bet is on the talent that executes and delivers on all of those things.
Yeah, so it talks about betting on talent, and you talk about culture. Obviously, it's part of the book. When it comes to the employee, what's the difference between a committed versus a complacent employee?
Well, I think one of the ways we get people committed is that we operate a business on principles, and they get complacent or compliant when we operate a business based on rules. So I like to tell this story about my own experience. The first job I had out of college was in a workplace that was all based on rules. There was rules for everything. And, for example, my boss would hover over me looking for just one error. He would dock my pay 30 seconds for 30 seconds if I was 30 seconds late from a 30-minute lunch. And one of the things he did was he took a nap every afternoon, a 2-hour nap, and he left strict instructions that he was not to be disturbed under any circumstances. One day I was sitting at the receptionist desk and the FBI shows up and they tell me they want to see my boss. And I said, I'm sorry, that's not possible. Why did I think that wasn't a good answer to the FBI? Well, I was so full of that rules-based culture, which I'd also call toxic culture, that I was more willing to obstruct armed federal agents than I was to wake my snoring boss. And that's what happens in a compliant or complacent, toxic environment when people are taught to keep their heads down, follow the rules, or get fired. Now, versus when you get the kind of talent that's committed to principles, which is what I had when I worked at Chick-fil-A. We had principles like treat everyone with honor, dignity, and respect. My favorite was our model for service in the restaurants, which was make second mile second nature. And so we focused on going second mile was about going above and beyond for the customer. We didn't tell people exactly how to do that. In fact, it's a longer story. We actually did start out doing that. And then we backed up and said, you know what works better if we let the people closest to the customer figure out how to go the extra mile. And so then restaurant team members started doing amazing things. They were changing tires in the parking lot and jumping off dead batteries in the drive-through and driving 25 miles away to return a lost wallet with all the contents intact. They were delivering boats to people who were being flooded out of their house and jumping through drive-through windows to save a choking child in the back seat, going above and beyond because they were committed to principles instead of being forced to be compliant to rules. And it changes the culture of the organization, obviously, tremendously.
Yeah, I think we could just have a podcast episode of you just telling the stories of what employees are doing to going above and beyond and going through that second mile. That's amazing. When it comes to the employee though, and I think I want to put both of the employee for the talent and the franchisee. I feel like there's always going to, from what I see, and I go to Chick-fil-A a decent amount, but what are the attributes that you're looking for when it comes to that employee, when it comes to that franchisee?
When I was selecting franchisees, there's two things that I was looking for from that standpoint. Number one is a heart for service. In fact, I think that in most any organization, you're going to look for people that have a heart for service. Can you think of any organization that they don't serve somebody at some point, that's not their goal? And so I was always looking for that person who had a heart for service. And then secondly, in that franchisee, I was looking for somebody with a strong leadership track record, somebody that was capable of doing two things. One is being the brand in that community and representing a good name, and also would attract both employees and customers because of the leadership capability. So, there's lots of things that I look for in franchisees, but that would be at the top of the list. Now, the interesting thing is that those employees that you're so used to enjoying their great service at Chick-fil-A, they're employees of those franchisees. So they're individually selected, trained, developed, managed by those. I think they have now something like 2,700 franchisees in Chick-fil-A. And so they're, the consistency that you see comes from the consistency of selecting the franchisee. And then they in turn train and develop their own talent. Now, if I were a franchisee of any business, and I own my own business now and I'm looking for talent, I'm looking for some similar things. I'm looking for people with a heart for service because we're going to serve somebody. And then secondly, I'm looking for people who have good judgment and have a track record of making good decisions. That doesn't mean they haven't failed along the way, because every single one of us have. But I'm interested in, well, when they did fail, what did they do about it? How did they recover? What did they learn from it? And I'm looking for a track record of mostly really good decisions, because if they have made good decisions for themselves, then I think they'll make good decisions for my company as well.
Yeah, well said. You hear all of the success that Chick-fil-A's had. One thing I don't really know about is the retention of the franchisee. So what is that today?
I can't answer for today because I've been retired from Chick-fil-A for 3 years, but
Yeah.
during the time that I was there for over 30 years, that retention was about 95%. I've been told it's similar today, and I'm sure that it is, but that has been over the history of the organization.
And what's it industry average? You
The
know?
industry average for a restaurant leader would be over 100%
Wow. Yeah, it's
of turnover. I'm sorry.
of turnover.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's night and day. So what's the difference? Like what obviously it is it start with this the heart for service? Does it start with you guys interviewing the franchisee, making sure that they're the good fit, making sure that they have the life in order along with the servant heart? Like, is it everything or what else? What's the difference between those two?
So I have a philosophy that if you select the right people to begin with, you're able to create retention. So for instance, when I went to work for Chick-fil-A, I had no budget for separation of franchisees or corporate staff. There was no budget for that. There were no exit interviews. There were no outplacement services, severance package, nothing. And so I went to talk to the president about that. And I asked him some questions. And he said, well, we don't plan on making changes. He said, you have a healthy budget for selecting talent, don't you? I said, yes, I do. And he said, well, the idea is that you're going to select the people that won't want to leave and you won't want them to leave. And so that was, for me, that's my philosophy. If you take the time and the effort on the front end, you'll have a lot less to worry about on the back end. And by the way, it's a whole lot less expensive, obviously, even though it takes a lot of time and expense on the front end to select talent that, by the way, not just that I want to work for me, but that they want to come, because 50% of the decision is still their decision. So it has to be the right fit both ways. And if I put that effort in the front end, then the back end will take care of itself. Now, specifically, you asked me about franchisees and Chick-fil-A franchisees. And I think part of what's great about their model, some things that Truett did, one is he didn't cap their income. He didn't say that you will make too much money. He had a business deal that said you sell all the chicken you want and the deal stays the same. You still get the percentage of the profits that are in the deal. So I think that's one thing. I think another thing is the environment, the opportunity to be with an organization that does value, that does treat you with honor, dignity, and respect, that has the kind of culture that starts with a meaningful purpose, a big why they exist, which is to impact the lives of others. And, to have a challenging mission and big goals to reach together and to be a part of that. And then to be part of an organization that has core values that are demonstrated throughout the organization. To me, that's what a remarkable culture is those three things. Chick-fil-A has had that, and I think that's why they're able to attract and keep the talent that they have.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So people know, I would assume, other industries in general. It doesn't have to just be the industry that Chick-fil-A is in, but other industries kind of pay attention to what Chick-fil-A is because they're uniquely different for the right reasons. What makes it? What's the reason? I know you can't just generalize, but is there reasons why people don't invest like Chick-fil-A invest into their people?
Oh, sure. This is hard. I mean, I joke about when I wrote my first book, which is all incorporated in Bet on Talent. My first book was called It's My Pleasure, but that book is out of print and all that material is now in Bet on Talent that you referred to. And I talk about it took 50,000 words to write what it took 50 years to create. This is hard work. It's hard enough just to define your purpose, mission, and values, but then to actually put it in place and make it believable because you're so consistent day in and day out. And then the other thing that happens, even with selecting talent, why don't people put more effort on the front end of that so that they'll have a good long-term result there? Again, it's the stresses of the marketplace. I need somebody today. I have people working overtime. I have an open slot and the customer's not being served. I've got to get a warm body in there. I can't take this selective approach to getting talent. I don't have time to do that. So that's what gets in the way is reality of life. And that's why you really have to commit to those things, stick to them. And then once you it's kind of the flywheel effect. Once you've created it, it doesn't mean you don't work at it all the time, but you keep that thing going rather than starting and stopping. And that's what happens with a lot of organizations. They don't put the effort up front end. And even if they do get successful, they think they've accomplished it and they back off when instead they need to be doubling down on it.
Yeah, I call it the easy bake oven methodology. Is you just set it and forget it. It's so easy. You put the cookies in, they come out in 30 minutes and you're done. It's not, you have to continue to lean into that, regardless of how uncomfortable it is at the time, or change is not fun, doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Right.
I think the same is true with, you think of professional athletes. Professional athletes don't necessarily train because it's enjoyable. They train because they want to be the best.
Right.
And I think the same is true with organizations like Chick-fil-A. So Bet on Talent is an amazing book. And one of the biggest thing about it is culture. So when it comes to organizations, who owns the culture?
Oh, that's a great question. First of all, the CEO owns the culture, and then everybody owns the culture.
Yeah.
But I think that accountability is with the top leader, because if they don't believe it, if they don't help develop a meaningful why in this purpose for the organization, if they don't help create a goal that everyone wants to rally around, if they don't model the core values of the organization, then culture is not going to stick. But once they have it, then it belongs to everybody. So if you're working in an organization and the culture is not great, you have to look and say, well, what contribution am I making? And people often ask that. They say, well, I'm not even a leader in my organization. What can I do about it? Well, you can start where you are. You can influence the team that you have. And the team, your team might be a small 3 or 4 person team. Do you have a meaningful purpose that you're pursuing as a team? Do you have a mission a goal that you're all going after? Do you have core values that are part of your team, and are you living them out together? Because that's how those things start. And you get one team that does it and you get results. And then the next team says, that looks like that's a pretty great department or function or team to work on. I'd like to create that in my own team. And then you can really spread that positive change throughout the organization.
Yeah. When it comes to mentoring, how important is that to you?
Well, if you don't have, I think everybody needs a mentor from the time they start their role, and it's really important when you're new in an organization and you're at different points of transition. But when you're new, you need that mentor to help you navigate a culture, because no matter how great a culture it is, you still have to learn how to navigate it. You have to understand the unwritten rules and how things get done and how decisions are made. And a mentor within the organization will help you with that. As you grow, you need a mentor. When you get your first leadership opportunity, you need somebody to help you that's wise to be a great leader. There are times you need people from outside the organization, especially the higher you get up in leadership. You need people to give you a perspective that's not necessarily the same perspective as you see inside, but helping you see things from the outside. So the next question is, people go, well, how do I get one of those people? Well, you ask. And sometimes you're going to be told no, because people only have so much bandwidth, and they can only, usually most leaders I know, they'll commit to, I'm going to mentor X number of people each year. And that's what they do. But you start by asking, and then you need to be a good mentee. And what does that mean? Well, it means you do all the work. You don't expect the mentor to figure out what the schedule is and schedule all the meetings. You come to the meeting with the questions you want answered and the topics you want to discuss. And by the way, it's a great idea if you send that ahead of time so they can be prepared. That's how you can be a good mentee. Make it easy for the mentor to mentor you and want to continue mentoring you.
Yeah. What about the opposite? So you continue to grow in your role, regardless of if you started at the church as a pastor's wife, and that you end up getting a job because you get introduced to somebody because your husband changed the tire of somebody else, all the way up to the role that you were at and the role you're in today. What about the helping people along that journey that are a couple steps behind you?
Well, it's personally important to me, and a lot of leaders that I know, we do want to help people, reach back and give them a hand and help pull them up. I think that I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have some of those significant people in my life. And I want to remove some stumbling blocks and obstacles for people. It's like, the important thing is to get wisdom, and the only way to get wisdom really is through experience, but it doesn't have to be just your own experience. It can be somebody else's experience too. So I think that it's incredibly important. It's a responsibility that we have as leaders to offer that wisdom and that experience to those who are coming behind us.
Yeah, well said. So the last question I have on the book, Bet on Talent, is what does loyalty mean to you?
What a great question, because I think that's a term people don't like anymore. Like they really don't believe anyone's loyal to them. So I don't think they're
Mm,
loyal to other people. But to me, loyalty is uh, it's showing up when expected. It's being someone that people can depend on. It's until proven otherwise, I trust you. I'm willing to follow you. I am willing to kind of put my stake in the ground here, if you will, to say that, I can be part of this organization. I have staying power here, as long as we're in this mutual relationship of trust. And I think that's what happens with loyalty, whether it's in a personal relationship or it's in your relationship with an organization. When trust gets broken, that's when loyalty gets broken. And but until that point, I think that to me, loyalty is about being all in for something I've committed to.
And is it all in one way, or is it a two-way street?
Well, I'm hoping it's a two-way street, but not necessarily these days. But I do think that loyalty tends to attract loyalty. And I think that, what I see with a lot of young people is they're waiting to see the payoff before they'll be all in. And my encouragement is, I think you're more likely to see the payoff if you'll go ahead and be all in. And you know
Yeah.
what? If you don't get what you expected in return, you'll still be better off, because you will have achieved some results that you needed to achieve for your career. You will have created some relationships that'll be helpful to you. I mean, the worst that happens is the loyalty is not returned and you go do something else with the skills you gained while being all in. But when you hold back and you're waiting for, well, I just want to know what I'm going to get out of this before I give it everything. You think about being on a sports team. I have sons that play college football. They never had the choice of deciding if they were going to be all in or not. If they weren't all willing to give it all that they had, then they were going to sit on the bench no matter what, right? And so you have to jump in, give it what you have, see what happens. Even if things don't work out exactly the way you wanted, you still end up with a set of skills and new relationships that I think you'll find beneficial somewhere else.
Yeah, I love that. So I ask every guest at the very end two questions. And the first question is, what book or person has influenced you the most in the past year? And then the second one is, if you could leave a note to all customer service or customer experience professionals that's going to hit everybody's desk Monday at 8 a.m., what would it say?
Mhm. Well, the first question is so hard to narrow that down, but I'm going to tell you the leader that's probably impacted me most in the last year has been Carrie Newhoff. And Carrie is creating a lot of leadership content right now. A lot of it's for churches, but it's useful for leaders of all kinds. But Carrie's content is great, and he has a brand new book out, At Your Best, that I highly recommend. But that's not why he's influenced me. Carrie has been somebody who's encouraged me. I left a career just like he left a long time career, and he's been very successful in some of the same things that I'm doing, writing and speaking and creating content and coaching. And Carrie's one of those people who's just willing to share and he has, in my opinion, he has one of those abundance mentalities, which is there's enough for everyone. So I'm going to share my platform. I'm going to share my knowledge. I want to help you, Dee Ann. And at this stage in my career, to find somebody like that, I'm trying to be that person. And I feel incredibly grateful to have met someone who cares that much to do that for me. So that's why Carrie's been influential for me. Now, that customer service, wow, it's all over the place. But I have to tell you what the note would really say. right now, and it would be thank you. And this isn't what you were expecting. It's not to tell you how to give better customer service, but it's actually thanks for showing up. Thanks for being there. Thanks for serving me. I've had a couple instances this week. I know I was just so grateful. I was on the phone with my favorite airline, and they were helping me with a problem. And it was kind of a complex trip I was trying to put together. And she repeated herself and she said, "I'm sorry, I've already told you that I've been working a lot of overtime." And I said, "You don't need to apologize. Thank you for being there to help me, to take care of me today. I'm glad you told me twice. Now I'm sure I know what I need to know." And so that's what my note would say, is just, these are hard times and people are not being nice to you sometimes. And I just want to thank you for being there.
Yeah, I love that advice. Dee Ann, what's the best way for my listeners to get in touch with you?
First of all, my website, deeannturner.com. That's DEEANN Turner.com. And then can find me on all the social media. Well, not all of them, but find me at my Facebook author page, which is Dee Ann Turner Author, on LinkedIn, on Instagram at Dee Ann Turner, at Twitter at Dee Ann Turner. And you can find my book, Bet on Talent, on my website and all the other popular places. And my brand new book is Crush Your Career, Ace the Interview, Land the Job, and Launch Your Future. And you can find that wherever great books are sold.
I love that. Go out and buy Dee Ann's, both of her books. She's a rock star. Dee Ann, thank you so much for your time today. I wish you nothing but the best, and continue to be that servant leader.
Thank you so much, Nick. It's been my pleasure to be with you.